Hello, Justin. Thank you for joining me on NRL Fans WA.
No worries, mate. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to the chat.
I really appreciate you giving me your time, mate. Looking back through your career, you're currently assistant coach at the Cowboys. You've had a pretty decent career. You played over 100 NRL games for a couple of different clubs. Representative for Wales, coaching over in Hull KR. You even did New Zealand women's coaching as well. So, when you look back on your career, mate, is there anything that you've taken away that's made you into the better husband, father, and person that you are today?
I think when you look back and you have a great appreciation for what you've done and what you've achieved, and I suppose some of the enjoyment that you bring to other people, and sometimes it's a little bit surreal that, I've been fortunate. I've been in the game for 20, 30 odd years now, and you have to sometimes take a breath and say, yeah, I'm very lucky to do what I do. I was very lucky to play, very lucky to coach. And I think it just makes you appreciate what you do for a living. Not everybody is able to get up every day for work and love going to work. But for 30 years, I've been able to do that, both as a player and as a coach, been able to see the world. And I think, to you about, what impact has that had on other parts of my life, I think they're very much intertwined. I think the fact that, you're a motivated person when you work in high performance sport, and you're a very proud person. And I think that, helps you, I suppose, in other parts of your life as well. So, very fortunate. I think what it also has done is made you have a level of humility, because you're very, very fortunate to do a job that, not everybody in the world gets a chance to do. So, I feel very, very lucky and fortunate. And sometimes I've got to pinch myself, even those parts of my job that I don't particularly like in any job. There's parts you go, oh, gee, I don't really want to get that done. But when you really sit down and you look at it as a whole, you think, wow, I'm pretty lucky to do what I do.
Absolutely. I was looking through your career, mate. You started off at Parramatta. Played 5 seasons with them, 80 odd games. Then you go down to the very cold of Canberra, and then you go over to New Zealand as well, and play for the Warriors. How was it leaving Australia to go over to New Zealand? Obviously, you would have played over there a little bit, but living over there, the different culture, different foods, time zones is another big one. But how did you find that?
Yeah, it was. I think when you're a young person, I think you take all those things in your stride. You just shrug the shoulders and say, "Oh, well, I'm just moving to Auckland," and even the way that all came about for me. I was playing for Wales in the World Cup in 2000. Daniel Anderson had just secured the job as the Warriors head coach, and he rang me while I was in the UK with my family and said, "Oh, would you be keen on coming to play for the Warriors?" And I said, "Oh yeah, cool. This sounds wonderful." I had an opportunity to stay at Canberra and stay there a little bit longer, but I'd known Daniel for a number of years since I've sort of been at school. He'd coached me at school level, school representative level. He'd obviously been at Parramatta, and I thought, oh yeah, why not? Let's just go. So I've sort of had that attitude towards most of my moves. When you look at my moves, I went from Sydney to Canberra, Canberra to Auckland, Auckland to France, France to England, England back to Canberra, Canberra to Sydney, Sydney to Melbourne, Melbourne back to Auckland, Auckland to Townsville. So I've become very nomadic over the last 30 odd years. So there are a lot of similarities between Australia and New Zealand, obviously, but there's also a lot of differences. I really enjoyed my time in New Zealand both times, both as a player and as a coach, because culturally, they're a very different country to Australia. And I really enjoyed learning about the Māori and the Pacific culture, because obviously there's a huge mix of not only the Māori culture, but the Pākehā, the white New Zealanders, and then you obviously have a lot of Samoan, Cook Island, Tongan people in Auckland. So or in New Zealand. So you have a real, mix of people. So I enjoyed that, and I think when I had an opportunity to work with the Kiwis and then with the Kiwi Ferns, that was even enhanced even more by being, involved with a national team, and they really embraced their culture. So I've loved that experience. I was fortunate enough after Auckland to go and live in France again, totally different country, and immerse myself in the culture there, and I learned a huge life lesson living in France, and I went there with the attitude that, oh, this is how we've done it in Australia, or this is how we've done it in New Zealand, and they just do things different. They take 2 hours for lunch. You can't go to the bank at lunchtime. You can't go and pay your light bill or your phone bill or whatever. That's just not how it works over there. And I remember having a conversation with a guy. He owned a cafe in a small village, Limoux. They're famous for making Blanquette wine, white sparkling wine in the south of France. And I remember sitting there with my broken French and his broken English, discussing, I suppose, life really. And he had this cafe, and it was a little bit worn down, and there wasn't much going on. He drove this old car, but he was also one of the happiest people I'd ever met in my life. And I remember saying to him, "Why are you so happy?" He goes, I've got what I have in life. I get to take my family out to lunch on a Sunday. I get to have a holiday to the mountains every August, which is their holiday time. He doesn't want a bigger house. He doesn't want a bigger cafe. He doesn't want a nicer car. He doesn't want all those things that sometimes, certainly, Australians and, the Western world, I know France is part of that, but to a degree, the modern world, that they want more, more, more. If we've got a 3-bedroom house, we want a 4-bedroom house. If we've got a 4-bedroom house, we want a holiday home. We drive a 3 Series, we want to drive a 5 Series. So he just didn't have that attitude, and it was a really, I suppose, interesting moment for me to learn about life, and sometimes just understanding, be happy with what you've got. Don't always chase something more. And I've tried to have that attitude towards my career as well. I've had some ups and downs in my career, and be grateful for the job that you have. Don't be chasing the one that you don't have. So that was something that was certainly, that sticks out in my mind after all my travels overseas.
And, just to reiterate on, what be happy for your NRL career, whatever it is. I've talked to a couple of guys, they've played one game of NRL or, 300 NRL games. The fact that you've made it to that level is an achievement in itself, and whatever you get to do after it, whether it's coaching or being part of the NRL system or whatever it is a testament to the fact that you were able to contribute, and people think that you're a valuable member towards the rugby league community.
I agree, and I'd even take that to another level. I always say to people that the feelings that you get playing rugby league at NRL level or coaching at NRL level, the same feelings you get at any other level, whether it's A grade, local A grade, the feelings are the same. There's just a little bit more at stake when it comes to NRL level. It's people's livelihoods, and that's how you pay the bills. But you're right, anybody that achieves some kind of success, even if they don't have success, but that camaraderie and that feeling you get being part of a team. I think people that play one game of NRL, that's a huge achievement. People that play any team sport, it's a huge achievement, whether it's just local A grade, with your mates in the park. So, I think it's important, when you play elite sport or coach elite sport, that you need to understand that, yes, that's a very small minority of people are able to do that because of it's a difficult thing to do, but it doesn't make the feelings or the sensations that you get from that any different to the ones that you get when you're playing with your mates down the local park. So, I'm immensely proud that I've been able to play and coach at elite level for a long period of time. And that's certainly not lost on me. That'll be taken away from me at some point, no doubt. But I'm very grateful for the opportunities that I've had so far.
Like I said, I was reading before through your career, mate. You mentioned before that you went through to France to coach. Then you got the full-time gig at Hull KR. You were there for 6 years, I think it was. How was it coaching an English side that obviously their style of play is different to what it is in Australia. How did you sort of find that transition from Australian footy to the English style?
Yeah, it's different. The role of a head coach is different over there as well. I mean, I first went to France and had some success there with Toulouse Olympic. We made the semi-finals of the Challenge Cup. First non-English team to make the semi-finals of the Challenge Cup, which we were very lucky to do that, and that got me on the radar of Hull KR. Hull KR, a bit of a sleeping giant of the rugby league world in England. Big club in the 80s. Never had played Super League, and they had so much potential, but they were, I suppose, hadn't really fulfilled that. And then when you go to a club, when I first went there, they were in the first division, so we had to get promoted from that level, and we're very fortunate. We went on I think it might have been a world record winning streak, 28 or 30 odd wins in a row without losing, which was a great achievement. At the time, you don't think of it that. You're just thinking about trying to get promoted to Super League. We made the semi-finals again of the Challenge Cup. So my first few years of coaching, I'm thinking, geez, how easy is it? Started in Super League, and I think we won 4 from 5. We're leading the comp after 5 rounds, and then we lost 9 in a row. So the the fairy tale had certainly finished. I think the biggest thing about coaching in England is that you have to be across the whole club. You don't have the same level of facilities. You don't have the same level of finances to support. And realistically, the club that I took over, we were at the top of Division 1, at the bottom of Super League. You don't have the quality of player. So you have to coach your ass off. You have to really try and squeeze the sponge dry. I was very lucky. I had a very supportive chairman in Neil Hudgell, who's still the chairman of Hull KR today. And we put a little bit of a plan together, and it came off. We got promoted, and then we stayed up, and we survived, and then we survived the next year, and then we got a license for Super League for a number of years after that. So they've had a couple of ups and downs since then. I think they're still in Super League now, which is great. I still sort of follow them quite closely. But we had a real mix of players. We had some players that were on the up, English players. We had some journeymen that were English players. We had some Australian players that were looking for an opportunity to really stamp their authority in rugby league. We even had a couple of French players. So yeah, it's a real big mix of people. I learned so many lessons coaching over there. Learned how to manage not only the people below you, but the people above you. That was a big learning curve, because I think coaching is one of those sports or one of those jobs that you don't necessarily, it's not something that you can go to university or to TAFE or to school to learn. You have to learn on the job. You have to learn on the job how to manage people and so forth. So, and you do it under the spotlight of winning and losing, and the spotlight of the media. And while the spotlight's not as bright in the UK, certainly in a place like Hull it is, because there's 2 rugby league teams, and it's a really bit of sport in the north of England. So, yeah, I had to learn to manage all those things. So I really enjoyed it. The other parts that I really enjoyed coaching over there, you actually get to coach footy, because there's a real discrepancy between the top teams and the bottom teams. So sometimes you have to really think outside the square to try and beat some of those top teams, because you don't have the same quality of player. So I really enjoyed the spitballing of ideas with the other coaches in trying how to beat the top team. So it was great. I had a ball over there, met some great people. Very lucky that some people that I work with, Andrew Webster's now coaching at the Warriors. Chris Chester, who's a GM of, I think he's at Lee Centurions. So a lot of people that I worked with and coached with over there have gone on to some really good careers as well.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's really awesome to hear. The difference and the amount of diversity, I guess, in the teams, and what you've taken away from it. Because you see guys like Trent Robinson, coached over in England, had some success, come to Australia, and he's had some success as well. I think that variety and that diversity of different players, different styles, and not having, I guess, the like you said, the facilities and stuff and the money, I guess, behind that facility, sort of brings you back down to earth in a sense that way.
I think the good thing is, I mean, Trent Robinson was a player for me at Toulouse, and so Robbo and I have known each other a long time. So when my first coaching job, he was a player, and he took over Toulouse when I left there to go to Hull KR. He took over as the coach, and had a huge influence at that club as a player and as a coach as well. And I actually employed Robbo because Robbo's background is strength and conditioning. And when I went to Hull KR to start with, we didn't have enough money for a full-time strength conditioner. So Robbo wrote all our strength and conditioning programs for us. He did some consultancy stuff for us, and helped me with my coaching journey, and like to think that I helped him with his coaching journey. So yeah, very, very, very lucky to come across some really good people over the years on my journey so far. Yeah.
Yeah. Going to the last couple of years at the moment, 2023, you're a Warriors assistant to Andrew Webster. And now you're at the Cowboys as an assistant to Todd Payton. And quite ironically, Todd Payton was in the job for the Warriors a few years ago before he had to move to Queensland for family reasons. And he had a really good season when he took over, and I think he would have been a really good fit for him, but obviously family reasons had to come back to Queensland. How have you found going from Andrew Webster, who's basically a rookie sort of coach in the top level NRL as a head coach, to Todd Payton, who's had a couple of years now where he's sort of had the ups and now the downs? How have you found it?
Yeah, it's been. I've been fortunate. I've known both of the guys for a long time. I worked with Webby for 6 years in the UK, so I knew him really well and stayed in quite in close contact with him over the years. And they both came through the Tigers. They both worked at the Tigers under 20s. I think Toddy might have been the coach and Webby might have been his assistant. Way back when they first started coaching. And yeah, it's there's not a huge amount of difference in both of them. They're both very similar in their approach to the game. They're both very offensive minded, but at the same time understand that defense is extremely important. They come from the Tim Sheen's school of footy. Obviously, Toddy played a huge amount of footy under Tim Sheen. So I love both of their thinking on the game. They're both big thinkers. They're both rugby league IQ is extremely high, which I love. I love just sitting around talking footy with those guys and where the game's going, what might be happening in the future, where do we think, the trends are going to change, or et cetera. So they're very similar in that regard. Webby came in last year and wanted to make some changes, come from a very successful organisation in the Panthers. And I'd coached with Webby at the Warriors previously. We both were assistants to Andrew McFadden before he left to go back to the Tigers, and then I stayed on to work with Mooks, and then eventually with Nathan Brown. So yeah, they're both very similar, but I was very impressed with Webby's, I suppose, development in terms of his management and his style of how he wanted his footy team to play. I always knew he knew the ins and outs of footy, but his management skills had sort of blown me away with how he had some really good ideas on how to get the best out of teams and get the best out of players and staff.
Yeah.
And I think I've seen similar characteristics in Toddy in the first few months. Toddy's a deep thinker of the game. He's also a really good listener, and I think that's important as a head coach to be a good listener. Empowers his players and his staff. I love working with both of them because I feel I can be myself. I can have my opinion, even though it might not be the same. I can still have my opinion, and they both respect that. So I've seen Toddy change because I was with Toddy when he took over the Warriors. When Stephen Kearney was moved on, unfortunately. So I stayed with Toddy for that period of time where we had some success, and then he came to the Cowboys. And I loved how he coached. I loved how he got the best out of his team. He's so honest. He's such an honest guy. You know where you stand with him, and I love that about him. That you just know where you stand. If he's happy with it, he'll let you know. If he's not happy with it, he'll let you know that as well. So um, it's been good. And I've also seen some change in Toddy from the first year. Obviously, as coaches, you talk to other coaches from other clubs, and when he was here at the Cowboys and had those first couple of years, we had a lot of phone conversations, he and I. But I've loved the maturity that I've seen in him over the past, 4 or 5 months that we've been here coaching. So, and I love also seeing that the respect that the players have for him. There's a real genuine level of respect from the players, and that's half the battle when you coach. You can have all the ideas in the world, but if your players don't want to do it for you, it doesn't really matter. So, I'm super excited about the next 3 seasons with him, especially this one, 2024, coming up.
Yeah, well, like I think everyone was really disappointed and shocked with the way the Cowboys went last year, the squad that they had, and where they finished the year before. Everyone thought they were going to be premiership contenders, and they probably should have been. You know, I look back at the Warriors and I'm thinking, are the Warriors, like in my head, are the Warriors going to do the same thing, have that really good year, and then just fall off? They're going to be still competitive to a certain extent, but just not be able to finish the games, which I hope doesn't happen for their sake, because rugby league needs that, especially in New Zealand.
Yep.
But it's always the case when that sort of comes around. A new coach comes in, they do really well, and then they fade off the next year. Um, the Cowboys this year with Toddy, they had that falling off last year. It's a matter for my thinking is that they need to get that being competitive for the full 80 minutes, where they're not dropping off. It's because all it takes, especially with these teams like Penrith, as you can see, I'm a Broncos supporter, but guys, teams like the Broncos, it just takes that split second or 30 seconds in a game to switch off,
Yep.
and 1 or 2 tries, and that's the game over because they'll defend the line so well.
Yeah, I think for the Cowboys last year, they had a really good reflection on last year. I think they're behind the 8 ball a little bit with the World Cup, and their preparation pre-Christmas wasn't as smooth as they would have liked, and they were sort of chasing their tail a little bit physically because of so many players were away with the World Cup. And we know that the game's so hard these days, like you've already alluded to, that if you just slacken off for a small amount of time, that teams can just score tries on you. So I think that was the main reason why last year was a bit of a blip for the Cowboys, because you're right, the quality of the squad is very, very good. We're very, very happy with our squad. I'd like to think that physically we're in really good shape compared to last year. Whereas the Warriors had a full, 6 or 7 weeks before Christmas to prep everybody with a new coach, didn't have a huge number of players involved with the World Cup, had a few with the Kiwis and a couple with Tonga, but not a huge number of players. So they were able to embed the new systems and so forth. So I think one of the things I learned very quickly in coaching is what makes good coaches good players. And I think both squads have got good players. I think adding Roger and to the squad at the Warriors is going to be good. I think who else did they buy? They bought Capewell from the Broncos. He's a high quality player, so they're going to be thereabouts. I mean, the thing that they'll need to be careful of is the fact that teams will be wary of how good they are and their system and teams are not going to take them lightly. Not that you take teams lightly. Nobody takes anybody lightly these days, because I think you only have to look at the Warriors season last year. I was only talking to a couple of coaches the other day that we didn't know our final position. 3 or 4 weeks to go with the season. This is how close it is, that we could have missed the 8, but we could have come second. We ended up obviously coming fourth. But with 3 weeks to go, that's how tight it is, and I think starting the season is really, really important, and that's what the Cowboys missed last year, a good start to the season. Rallied during the middle part and during Origin, and then because of the lack of physical prep that they had, or they didn't have because of the World Cup, they sort of fell away at the back end of the season. So I expect both teams to be thereabouts. I think, for me, somebody asked me the other day, what team do I think is going to be in and around the grand final, and I think the Warriors will be there for sure.
like from my opinion, there is a couple of teams. I reckon there's probably about 6 teams that can really fight for the premiership. You know, and it's so open, which is so great to see. You haven't seen it for a long time like that, where there's six, nearly 8 teams that could genuinely fight for the premiership. And it makes it such an interesting prospect for the future of rugby league and the season. You know, the viewings is going to be through the roof because every game is going to be, well, hopefully, entertaining. You know, where it's not going to be a one-sided. Where you know, for example, just using as an example, the Tigers are getting belted every week, and then you know, Penrith's winning every week, and they're winning by stupid margins. I don't think the competition's going to be like that.
You only have to have a look at the teams that are down the bottom. Tigers, they're going to improve. Dragons, new coach, they're likely to improve. The Bulldogs, they're going to improve. Who else missed the 8? Manly, they're going to improve. You know, Luke Brooks, high quality player, they're going to improve. Titans, new coach, they're going to improve. So, you know, there's just half a dozen teams that I've just mentioned that didn't make, definitely going to improve. And then you got South who didn't make the 8. They're going to be thereabouts because of the quality of their team. Parramatta, and you know, good quality team. They're going to be thereabouts. Cowboys, you know. So there's the 8 teams that we've spoken about. They're all going to get better. So yeah, it's going to be a great competition, and we're very lucky. You know, we're lucky with our sport, unless you're coaching in it, that it's so close every single week. You know, anybody can beat anybody else. And you mentioned 6 teams. You know, there's going to be 1 or 2 that they're going to shock and surprise us, like the Warriors shocked and surprised everyone last year. I think there'll be 1 or 2 teams down the bottom that'll surprise everyone and really make a really good run for it. And there might be 1 or 2 at the top that, you know, aren't as good as they were last year, and that's great for our sport. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to jump into something a bit more personal stuff now, mate. With rugby league, or sorry, not just rugby league, but life in general, that these days mental health, really big thing. Has there been a low point in your life that you've gone through? You know, and if so, how did you get through it?
Yeah, I'm like everybody else. You know, there's always periods through your life where you have good and bad moments. Yeah, so you know, not that long ago, you know, went through a really tough period, you know, relationship breakdowns and those types of things, and they beat you up, and then the losing jobs, you know, that's not always fun either, and sometimes they can sort of, you know, compound. So I think the thing that I learned maybe 5 or 6 years ago, that it was important to be physically in good health. You know, I know personally myself, you know, let my physical health deteriorate to a point where it was detrimental to other parts of my life. You know, I wasn't being able as active as I should have been. So I really tried to change that. I really tried to make sure that when things aren't good for me, that I communicate, because I'm not a great communicator. Sometimes when things aren't great, I tend to shut down a little bit. And I learned through a really tough period of my life that doesn't work. You need to be able to talk to people. So I have people in my life now, you know, mainly my parents, that if something goes wrong or things aren't good, that I can talk to them. So, yeah, mental health is a huge part of everyone's life. And sometimes people can look at people and go, oh, their life's really good, or their life's perfect, and I take mine. I have a great life. You know, I have a really good life. You know, we've rattled off the things that I've been able to do with my coaching and playing and being able to see the world. But it doesn't mean that you can't suffer moments of despair or moments where it's too much for you. And the best thing that I ever did was seek help. You know, go and talk to doctors, talk to friends, and physically be in good shape. You know, whether it be walking, running, exercising. I think there's a real good correlation between, you know, making sure that you're active. You don't have to be a marathon runner. You don't have to be, you know, a Tour de France cyclist, but just being active and you know, doing something to make sure physically you're in good shape. I think that's really helped me over the years, and I'd like to think that I'm in a much better position now to deal with any kind of adversity that may come my way than that I might have been 10 years ago. Because I think sometimes, certainly in my life, sometimes you keep going up, and it's not until you have some adversity, whether it be a relationship breakdown, whether it be a loss of a job, whether it be, you know, some financial stress because you've made some poor decisions or whatever it may be, that you have to deal with that, and often as a sports person or a sports coach, you don't have to deal with those because your life's always jacking up and up and up. So I learned that lesson maybe 10 years ago. And I'm grateful that I learned that lesson. It would have been nice to learn a little bit earlier in life, but that's the way it goes. And there's some of the things that I've certainly taken out of it for sure.
It really is. And it's good to see that you'd learnt those lessons. It might have taken you a bit longer than you would have hoped, in a sense, but in the other side too, it's happened to you at that time in your life, so you're able to get through it, and the maturity of your mind is able to process it a lot better.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if there's people out there, and unfortunately in our game we've lost some people to mental health over the years, and and it really hurts my heart to see that we've lost them and they weren't able to reach out. They didn't feel that they were able to reach out, and if any that situation, reaching out is the best thing you can do, because people only want you to be better and healthy and be on the up and not certainly on the down.
Absolutely, buddy. Absolutely. I want to jump into the question that I guess everyone that watches this is going to want to know. Your thoughts on the 80th team. Obviously, it been big news about PNG being pushed by the Australian government, NRL, all that sort of stuff. There's been some reports out this week that out of all I think there was 30 coaches in the NRL contacted, 50% wanted Perth, and then the next one was New Zealand.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to say I was one of the coaches that was surveyed, and I voted for Perth. So I was one of the 50% that voted for Perth. So, I just think that Perth's got so much to offer. Like, I've been lucky. I played over there against the Western Reds. I coached with the Kiwis against Australia. Might have been before we went to the UK for the 2016 Four Nations tournament over there, and it's a beautiful part of the world. I love Perth. I love Fremantle. I love Western Australia. I just think they're sports mad. They love their sport. You can see that with the AFL. You can see that with the cricket. You can see that with a lot of different sports. And I just think that, to have commercially to have a different time zone would be great as well. And you look at the State of Origin that was played over there a couple of years ago. You look at any games. I think Souths played Warriors there a number of years ago. I think Souths have played a number of games over there that there's always a good turnout. And the weather seems to be really good all the time, So I would just love to see a bigger footprint in Australia. I can understand the PNG push, but I think a Perth team is a priority. I'd love to see a team in Perth first before anywhere else. Then, maybe a PNG or Adelaide or somewhere like that. But I think we've seen previously when sporting events go to Western Australia, they embrace it. And while it's not a rugby league hotbed, I understand that it's not a rugby league hotbed. But you look at Auckland. Auckland, rugby union is the number one sport in New Zealand, but they can still survive, if there's some success. So I'd love to see it. I'd love to see that part of Australia explored. There's obviously been some great athletes come out of that state, and certainly I can think of cricket and AFL, but I'm sure there's some good rugby league players over there hidden away somewhere as well. So for me, I'd love to see him in Perth for sure. So it wasn't just me. It was another 15 or 16 other coaches that really think that Perth should be the next team.
Yeah, that's great to see. The people that are at the top of the level, they're looking at the recruitment side of things, and they're looking at because I knew even Wayne Bennett said that he wanted another team in Perth. He was over here last year for the Dolphins because we had a double header over here, and he was promoting Perth. He wants another Perth team to come back. There's so many people and players, even ex-players that I've interviewed, like 99% of them want another Perth team. It doesn't make sense to go anywhere else. I know North Sydney are trying to get back in, but there's too many teams in Sydney at the moment. Even though they're financially viable, they're not going to put another team in Sydney. how would you feel seeing a traditional North Sydney Bears team up with Perth and make it that way?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure how commercially that goes. I think we've seen with some other relocation. We see the Northern Eagles, which was didn't really work. We saw I've seen the West Tigers. They obviously they won 2005, but there's always when you amalgamate or you change the venue for somebody or what their territory is. I'd like a new team. I just think a team that people from Western Australia can really get behind,
Yeah,
and really feel it's their team. It's a Western Australian team. There'll be a Western Australian style that they do game days with. I think commercially, it would be a really good win for the NRL. I think certainly a very wealthy state, so it's going to support via commercial partners and sponsors, etc. Yeah, and I think I went over for the Nines. I was coaching the Kiwi, the girls team, the Warriors girls team for the Nines when we went over there, and just the vibe that was around at the time, and a lot of the people that I spoke to over there, they weren't, Eastern State people going over for the game. They were actually Western Australian people that either relocated there, many years ago, or they were born and bred in Western Australia, and they'll come into the game to see something new. And I think we know with our game, it's an entertaining game, and I think once you get head around the rules, you'll love it. Like I lived in Melbourne for a little while as well, and I didn't grow up on AFL. I grew up on rugby league, but once I sort of got my head around the rules down there, I really embraced the game because they loved it. They loved it in Melbourne, and you had to watch it down there because if you didn't watch it, you had nothing to talk to people about. So I think the same rugby league in Perth. I think once people get their head around it and they've got a team that's theirs and they feel that they own it, I think that'd be a great thing. And I think they'd really get behind it, and I think it'd be a real success. I think it really would be. Yeah, and
yeah,
we'd see some local homegrown players. That'd be the best part. See some local homegrown players, that play for the local team.
yeah. I know there's a few in the NRL at the moment. There's a few WA boys, even a couple of WA girls in the NRLW. So we do have the talent here, and there've been WA players in the past that have gone over and they've produced an NRL level. So it just hasn't, because we're sort of out of sight, out of mind. We don't really get the guys exposure, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, the WA team always does pretty well with the affiliated states competitions.
Yep.
They take it up to the New South Wales and Queensland teams. But I think there's a lot of. I always hear the arguments, that it didn't work before. It's not going to work again. Like I've lived here. I was born over east. I've lived there. I lived over here since I was 9 years old, and I'm 35 now. I love rugby league. I would buy, even though I'm a Broncos, like as hard out as you can get, I would buy a membership to the Perth team just to see. Even if it's one membership that makes it survive, that's what I'll do because I want it so my kids can grow up with those idols. That they get to see weekend or every second week or whatever it is. And I think that's what Perth needs is a constant rugby league game over here in that sense, where it's every second week or every third week for these young kids to go, wow, there's a different avenue of sport. It's not just AFL or it's not just soccer. It's not just cricket. There's another avenue of sport.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we've lacked in the last few years is that even I think just prior to COVID, we had a SG Ball West Coast Pirates team, and it's once COVID hit, obviously that had to stop, but there was no pathway, or there hasn't been a pathway to the NRL, and if they get that NRL team, it's there for them, and it just provides a future for these kids where, like, because I've got 10 kids in my house, and I've got 4 of them that play league,
Yeah.
So I make them play leagues, but it's just then they've got a pathway to see these guys, to be them and go, holy crap, I want to be, an Adam Reynolds, or I want to be this, but they're playing for the Perth team.
Well, the other thing is, I think we've seen with the Dolphins, everyone say, "Oh, there's not enough Southeast Queensland. There's not enough room for another team." Look at the support that they've got in 1 year, the membership that they've got. They've just taken off in a very short period of time, and they haven't had a huge amount of success. They obviously started the season reasonably well, but didn't go on with it. But they've got their diehard fans, and not only the pathway for the NRL, but also the enjoyment that you get out of playing a team sport. I mentioned a little bit earlier that the feelings that you get playing NRL are the same feelings you get playing local footy or under 17s or under 15s, and I think some of the best feelings I got playing footy were when I played school footy. So it's not always about getting kids to NRL, but that'd be great to have a pathway for them, because there'd be some great athletes over there, but there's also just great opportunity to get people playing a team sport in our team sport, because there's great benefits out of doing that as well. So it'd be fantastic to get a team in Perth very, very soon. Hopefully the next franchise would be a Perth one. And I just think, it was 30 years ago, the Western Reds. You also got to remember that it was the Super League war that was going on at the time. The world's changed. The game's changed since then. So, I don't think, using that as an excuse it didn't work previously is a good enough reason. I think the fact that the game's in a very different state, than what it was 30 odd years ago. And I think it's in a very good position. If they want to make it successful, they will.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know we've been on here for a little while now, mate. I know you're probably busy to get home, bustling to get home. So just one more thing, mate. Have you got any advice for the young kids in WA that want to get to the highest level?
Just work hard. I think I say this to all kids, no matter what level or amount of ability that you've got, the higher you go in our game, this is my opinion, the less ability you need. The ability gets you seen a lot of the time, but it's hard work. If you work hard and you get very good at what your job is as a rugby league player, whether it's a winger or a fullback or a centre or a front rower, find out what they do and what they do well, and just do that. I think because coaches want people they can trust, or players that they can trust. So work hard. I wasn't a great player as a kid. I played a lot of Division 3 and Division 2, but I worked hard. I worked hard. I wasn't naturally talented. I had to work on, all the skills that I developed into an NRL player, but I did. I worked hard. So don't give up. Even if you get knocked back, I got knocked back from rep teams all the time early on, 13, 14, 15, 16, got turned down, didn't make rep teams, didn't make first teams. But I just kept working hard. So that'd be my advice. Work hard, don't give up, and enjoy. It's important to enjoy. I think, our game is a wonderful game, but make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons. So work hard and just enjoy it. That'd be my advice for anybody that wants to happen. And I think, if you haven't got an opportunity, just go knock on doors, ring people, talk to people, send letters, write emails, whatever you need to do, and somebody might give you an opportunity. If that happens, well, just take it with both hands.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, mate, on behalf of the WA people, NRL fans WA, I want to wish you, yourself, and the Cowboys the best of luck for the season coming up. Especially being a Queensland supporter myself. I know you're a New South Welshman by birth. So am I, but I'm a Queensland supporter.
We'll just keep that quiet.
Through and through.
I haven't told them yet. I'm in Queensland, so better not say it too loud. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. But we want to wish you the best of luck. Hopefully during the season we could catch up for a quick chat on the page, and nothing but the best for you, mate, and good luck with the season coming up.
Thank you very much. Great chatting with you, and great seeing what you're doing for promoting the game in the West, mate. It's fantastic. Keep it up. Keep up the good work.
I appreciate it, mate. Thank you very much, Justin. Have a great day, mate.
Thanks, mate. Talk soon.